everybody, Mike Burkholder, Contra Costa. Today I am super excited. I have a wonderful individual, a guy that I only see during crab season because he is traveling the world. He's making transportation a better place, and I will actually see him at the Network of Care in a few weeks. Randy Iwasaki, the Executive Director of Contra Costa Transportation Authority. Sort of butchered that. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today, Mike. Thank you very much for inviting me here today to talk a little bit about transportation.
So, Randy, why did you get into transportation? And it's kind of an interesting career you've had, but what made you want to get into it?
So many years ago, I worked for my father at my dad owned a gas station and a repair shop. So I formed my love of cars around my occupation at the time growing up. And my mother's brother used to be a professor at Colorado State University in civil engineering, and we used to go visit him during the summers. And he took me out to the civil engineering lab, and I got to see how he would analyze using research the wind loading on Candlestick Park, for example. They did the analysis on filling in the gap on the old Candlestick Park. They used to measure erosion on the Colorado River. They'd model that to see how much sediment is being moved down that river. And then they would show me the transportation lab about how these interchanges are designed to move more people. And I thought, wow, if my uncle can do it, I certainly can do it. And so I ended up becoming a civil engineer. And what's interesting about in those days is I couldn't explain exactly what a civil engineer did. I just knew I wanted to do that based on what my uncle showed me in his labs at Colorado State University.
And so you ended up going to college. You got hired by CALTRANS. You were there 20 years. And you actually were appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger at the time to be the director?
Yeah, so I spent actually almost 27 years. My bio says 26, but I started June 1st, 1983, and I left April 15th, 2010. So I was a couple months shy of 27 years. But I was appointed actually twice by Governor Schwarzenegger. When he first got elected in 2004, I was appointed as the interim director while they did a nationwide search, and ultimately they selected another person, and I became the chief deputy director or the chief operating officer of Caltrans for about almost 5 years. And then when the director left at the time, Will Kempton, Governor Schwarzenegger appointed me as the director to take his place back in 2009.
And what was that like, just hanging out with the Gov, the Terminator?
He's a great guy. When he's in a room, his presence is well known. He's not an understated guy. He was just a larger than life kind of a figure in the room, and he had a great sense of humor, but he was always laser focused in on transportation, run it like a business. I mean, he's a businessman at the end of the day, and he had the ability, using his charisma and his contacts and his ability to communicate, to go out and he's the one who single-handedly helped get Proposition 1B passed by the voters for transportation. That was, in those days, a very large sum of money, $19.925 billion for transportation to fight congestion. And he did that rather than to run directly for re-election. He was out campaigning for propositions, in our case, 1B for transportation, but 1A, 1C, 1D, and 1E, those propositions, which were very important, one fixed levies in California. And so they did a lot of great things, but he was really a big presence when you met him.
Sure. And then so in 2012, you were basically Contra Costa stole you away, I guess. How did that whole thing work out?
So in 2009, I get appointed as the director. I get a phone call a couple months later from a recruiter saying, hey, there's an opening. You've been named. Your name was mentioned as a possible candidate for replacing the executive director at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And I said, okay, I'm interested, because when you're in an administration, generally when the administration changes, if you're a department director or higher level, you're a political appointee, generally the new administrations don't keep you. And being a civil engineer, I didn't want to get fired. And so the recruiter had called me in late 2009. And so I signed up to come to Contra Costa Transportation Authority because I thought it was I knew it was a well-run organization. The board at the time, if you looked at how they voted 11-0. There's 11 board members that oversee CCTA. And they voted together, and so that must mean either they're in lockstep on everything, or if they have disagreements, they do it amongst themselves, in the lunchroom before the meeting. And so that would be easier for me coming from the outside. And then the staff was really good as well. And so they had good staff, good board, and I thought that was a good environment for me to come and learn more about transportation at the local level.
And so coming to Contra Costa, had you ever seen really anything as bad as Highway 4 at the time?
If you're talking about congestion, the answer is yes. So we complain about congestion in Northern California, but when you go to Los Angeles, the duration of the congestion is all day long. At least here in the Bay Area, you have some pockets still left, like around noon, let's say 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. You can still pretty much get around pretty easily in the Bay Area, unless you have an accident, weather, or things like that. If you go down to Los Angeles, it is like that all day long, and including into the night. And so, yes, we do have bad traffic in the Bay Area, and State Route 4, before we got started on widening and modernizing that facility, it was the 10th worst commute in the United States peak hour. And so, yes, you bought a house on the weekends here in East County, you got up in the morning on Monday, and you had to drive an hour and a half to go 30 or 40 miles, which is, to me, is not right. It's not right based on the techniques and the technologies that we have today to try to help motorists get to their destinations a little more easily and more reliably.
Yeah, and what was really great about Highway 4 is you were able to do it in phases. You got to Railroad, then you ended up out by the 160 connector. Now you're finishing up Balfour, but you told this story, and I don't know how often you tell it, about trying to get to Brentwood from, I don't even know where it's from, but you had to go back through Antioch, back around, and then you're like, okay, we got to get to Brentwood. Can you kind of share that story of what it was like with Mayor Taylor?
So when I was hired in 2010, the board chair at the time was Mayor Bob Taylor from Brentwood. And coincidentally, he is going to be the chair, assuming the vote goes right, in February of this year. So I've gone full circle. I've been with the authority almost 9 years. And so he was my first board chair, and he called me up one day and said, "Hey, can you meet me and Bailey, the public works director at the time, out at Sand Creek?" And I said, "Where's Sand Creek?" He said, "Well, just go out State Route 4 toward Brentwood." So I got out, and it was a hot afternoon. It was probably maybe getting close to 100 degrees. I pulled off the road, and if you remember back in 2010 at Sand Creek, there was no interchange.
Nope.
There was a steel wire holding a temporary traffic signal floating, waving up in the air, and I pulled off on the dirt side. It was a three-legged intersection, so Sand Creek heading toward the east was built, but toward the west wasn't built yet. There was no structure. And I pulled off the road, and there's Mayor Taylor and Bailey were there. And they were talking about the need to build an interchange at this location, but there was no money. And as I looked back toward the west, traffic was backing up for 2 or 3 miles. And they explained to me that the developer eventually was going to connect Sand Creek. We need to build this interchange. We need to find the money. It's causing congestion. It was one of the top 10 accident locations in Brentwood for the last decade at that time. And so they said, "We'll see you later. Good luck trying to get your way home," because you had to make a left-hand turn. But I couldn't find the actuator in the dirt to try to get my left phase. So I ended up making a right, heading away toward Mount Diablo, and then cutting over at Marsh Creek, and then make a U-turn and come all the way back. And I see this traffic backed up for miles. So we ended up making a petition to the California Transportation Commission for some corridor mobility improvement account money, which it generally is for state highway application. But when I worked for CALTRANS, we added some information in there that said unless it improves the CMIA, congestion management or congestion mitigation improvement account funded corridor, state corridor, and this was at the time was the bypass. And so we asked the California Transportation Commission for $33 million. We got $25 million. And that was only slated to build the interchange with one bridge. And ultimately, we ended up taking some money off of Balfour because we would save about $8 million on the total cost of both Brentwood and Balfour by combining the bridges at that time rather than come back and build it later. It didn't make a lot of sense. And so we built 2 bridges. That location now, it's not even on the accident location in Brentwood. So it's done what it should. It's made it a lot safer at that interchange, and it's allowed more mobility. But then what happened as we finished the 5 segments of State Route 4 between Pittsburgh and Antioch, we then finished the 164 interchange because they only built a half.
Sure.
And so when I was in Sacramento, I used to get people coming in from Contra Costa County, from the city of Brentwood. And I didn't know at the time where Brentwood was. And I was in the director's office, and they said, Randy, you civil engineers don't do your job very well because we have to make a U-turn to go to Brentwood. And I'm thinking the freeway system in Los Angeles near Brentwood is pretty good. Why do you have to make a U-turn to go into Brentwood? And they said, no, in Contra Costa County in Northern California. And so we didn't do a good job. They said, no, we actually have to make a U-turn at Hillcrest, go back and come back into Brentwood on State Route 4. I said, that doesn't make any sense. And so I was late for a meeting to meet Mayor Taylor. I lived in Elk Grove at the time. I was coming over the Antioch Bridge. I missed the sign that said Brentwood when you had to weave through Oakley.
Sure.
And I ended up making a U-turn. And then I go, oh, my God, we didn't finish the other half of that interchange. So we petitioned the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and we got $50 million. I said, how much do we need to finish this interchange? The staff said $50 million. I said, is there float in there so we can give MTC a check back? And, because we don't need that much. And they said, oh yeah, there's a lot of money in there. There's a lot of float. And so we ended up awarding the contract. When we finished it for $49,300,000. So we gave a check back for $700,000. And so Balfour is the last project. It's almost done. And we're excited about the completion of State Route 4.
Balfour is a really neat project because it's really alleviated a lot of traffic just going towards Vasco. 160 again. I mean, you guys have done some amazing work out in Contra Costa, out in East County, that is. I don't think anyone anticipated how freed up the lanes would actually become. Was that ever anticipated, and did you guys work with CHP to let them know, like, hey, you're going to have people going 80, 90 miles an hour?
So the State Route 4 was modernized for a couple of reasons. One, to fight congestion during peak hour because it was untenable situation with the delay that you were faced with. The other piece was we wanted to make sure that we extended BART. And so you had to improve the median to get BART all the way out to Hillcrest. And so that was the scope of that project. We knew there was a speed problem during the evenings, and really that's a combination of be safe when you drive, be reasonable when you drive, and also we've asked for added enforcement. And the other day CHP was out in force giving tickets to try to slow that speed down on State Route 4.
So we got Highway 4 pretty much, it's finishing up. Now you're moving down more into Central County with the, the Interstate 680, State Route 4. Can you explain that project? Because unlike Highway 4, which got a lot of attention, this one's kind of more just angry drivers with the commute problem and traffic. So what's that going to accomplish?
This is a really cool project. 680, Interstate 680, State Route 4, Phase 3. People ask all the time, Randy, why did you guys start with Phase 3 and not Phase 1, 2? Phases 1 and 2. Well, there's 4 cloverleafs of that interchange. And what happened is that interchange was built in the 60s for traffic in the 60s. And as volume has increased, the weaving is too short, the spacing between the on-ramp and off-ramp, and all 4 cloverleafs, and it just doesn't work very well. You don't have the capacity. And then you have a lane drop heading to the eastbound as well because you got a off-ramp there that goes to a local street. It just causes a lot of problem. The geometry is not right. And so Phase 3 widens State Route 4 through the interchange. So we're going to widen 5, I call them twin bridges, 10 bridges, but 5 sets, pairs. We're going to widen those bridges, and then we're going to replace Grayson Creek Bridge because it's too low. So during peak floods, the water rises and hits the bottom of the bridge, the soffit of the bridge.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then they have some piling exposed in the stream bed because the stream bed has been altered over time and it's actually dropped. So we have a real issue there, and we want to replace that bridge because safety is our top priority, and it's a great opportunity. So Phase 3 widens State Route 4 from I'll call it the HOV lane or the 242 merge onto State Route 4. It goes back 4 miles. It widens on the inside.
Oh, so you're really going back to give people time to merge and make the turn, and it's just completely safe.
Well, it's not. Yes.
I mean, not completely safe because there's always driver error, but that's okay. 4 miles. Holy smokes.
So we're widening 4 miles back. We're also extending the HOV lane 2 more miles back toward Interstate 680. So once that is completed, the roadbed will stay in place as we basically, almost like a set of Legos, we pop in the 4 different segments of the new cloverleaf on-ramp and off-ramp configurations in the future that'll give more spacing and more orderly progression of getting on and off that freeway off State Route 4. So there's no throwaway. All the bridges will be widened, ready to go for the full modification of the interchange when we get more money to build those other phases. And then we also added 2 more phases to have direct connectors between 680 and State Route 4, HOV. So you never have to weave, because weaving causes congestion. So listen, so when we widen State Route 4 and we extend the HOV lanes 2 miles back, now you can stay on 680, come up to State Route 4. As you get on that on-ramp, you're going to merge across 2 lanes into the newly constructed HOV lane. And you're going to stay on it 2 more miles.
Wow.
Versus now you go across 242 and you merge across 4 lanes. I'm not counting because the lane drops ultimately, but 4 lanes across into that HOV lane. That you weave across a greater distance with high congestion, and it causes a lot of congestion. So we want to entice not everybody doesn't have to do this, but more people to stay on 680 because it's going to be more efficient ultimately, because you're going to only cross 2 lanes, get in that HOV lane, and head eastbound in the evening. We think it's going to be better commute.
So it'll become Alameda's problem to fix their traffic when everyone catches up into that county.
Well, yes, we're all trying to work together to make sure that people think that we're actually coordinating these projects. But Interstate 684 is the last bottleneck. We call it crossroads to Contra Costa, and we think when it's operating right, it'll help create and bring hopefully more mobility options and therefore more jobs out to East County, because really we're out here in East County, we're jobs poor, we're housing rich. So we have very smart people that live here in Contra Costa County, and specifically where we are here in East County, but they have to drive a long way to the Silicon Valley or to San Francisco to work. So why not bring a few of those smart jobs out to East Contra Costa where we have land, as we rebuild the weapons station, as we come out here to Oakley and other places, the northern waterfront, who our current board chair, Supervisor Federal Glover, is a strong proponent for the revitalization of the northern waterfront. How do we then create smart jobs along that waterfront and then make sure the goods get shipped to the right locations easily? That's what we're trying to do with transportation.
Absolutely. And you guys have definitely worked your butts off to even just come in quicker and under budget, and it's been proven that you've done it. Aside from some of these big projects, can you speak on maintenance, such as like potholes and I don't know, rail replacement? Like, kind of what are you guys doing to maintain the system so that you don't have to do these big overhauls in the future?
So Measure J and Measure C contain dollars specifically earmarked, allocations for the local agencies based on population and lane mile. So in our current measure, which the voters, and by the way, thank you voters for supporting that, because we needed 2/3 to pass the last sales tax measure, Measure J, it has almost 20%, has 18% going to majority of the cities and the county based on lane mile and population. Those dollars, 18% of the yearly allocation of sales tax, goes directly to the local agencies to deal with those pothole issues, pavement preservation projects. Mike, what you said is absolutely true. If you can preserve a roadbed early enough before you have to rehabilitate it, it's about 20 times cheaper. So it's a lot cheaper to get it during the preservation problem. Our problem is our infrastructure out in East County. Some of the cities are brand new, some aren't so new. And so the roadbeds require a little more tender loving care and some preservation projects.
Gotta love all that sand.
And so we're catching up. The other thing we have here is we have a lot of people using our facilities. So we're getting more and more people driving their vehicles on our roadways every day, and that wears the roadbed out as well. And you get heavy trucks, and then it's raining, and so when water intrudes into the subbase or the portion below the asphalt concrete, it causes the road moves a little bit, and then it starts cracking. And so those factors, more traffic, more because we have more people living out here, and then rain or water intrusion causes an acceleration of pavement
Sure.
deterioration.
Definitely. And so did you guys, with, speaking of Measure J and Measure C funds, had the gas tax not passed, would that have impacted you guys at all?
Oh, absolutely. It would impact all of California. The last time I was working for CalTrans a long time ago, there was a blueprint for the 21st century. It doubled the excise tax on gasoline from 9 cents to 18 cents. The last cent, it was staggered. It was not all at once, and the last penny was collected to make it 18 cents was in 1994. So that's a long time between 1994 and last year to get an increase. It'd be like you haven't gotten a salary increase in 20 years, but yet you have to buy your family things to eat, you have to replace your car, you have to replace your roof, all these kinds of things that you have to normally do without a raise in 20 years. It's pretty difficult. And I think part of our roadbed conditions is because people complain a lack of maintenance.
Sure.
Well, if you don't have money, it's very difficult to do maintenance.
Absolutely. And so going along with those projects, you guys are doing something a little different with driverless cars and technology. I mean, how did that even come about? I mean, are you just a technology nerd, or, are you, I mean, how did you even get into that?
It's a great question. One night I was at a board meeting, our board meeting, and I'll give a supervisor at the time, Susan Bonilla, all the credit. She pulled me in the lunchroom after the meeting, and she said, Randy, you need to go out to the Concord Naval Weapons Station and figure out a way of creating smart jobs. And I said, where's the Concord Naval Weapons Station? And she said, it's in Concord. Have somebody take you out and show you around. This is when I first got hired by CCTA. And so I went up, stood on the bluff of this, because part of the weapons station is on the mountainside. I stood on this beautiful bluff, and I said, my God, this would be a great place to build a home, because I could oversee the whole valley, Concord. It was a beautiful view. It's kind of slight breeze coming up the mountain from the ocean. And I said, the only way to create smart jobs that I know of, being a transportation guy, or in your case, what you call me, transportation nerd, is I want to create a test bed. And I think the latest phenomenon is self-driving vehicles. And so that's how GoMentum Station was born. Is I sent Jack Hall to Concord to get us a sub-license with the U.S. Navy, which we received, and then we started bringing in our partners to begin testing at GoMentum Station with the idea of Honda, for example, they've leased a space in Concord to store their vehicles and some of their engineers. Well, if they can migrate a few of their engineers to Contra Costa County, they might say, oh my God, I can afford a garage and a backyard in my house. I don't have to rent a place. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And so we've had a great partnership with the city of Concord. It's hard to go into anywhere and say, hey, I want to create a self-driving car test bed and explain that to people where they really embrace you, saying, Randy, that's a great idea.
Well, it seems like Bishop Ranch has been open to it too, to let you do their testing in their parking lots or on their streets there. Is that kind of part of it, or?
Yeah, so GoMentum Stations where they test in a secure location.
Okay.
And much appreciation once again to the city of Concord for working with us all these years and trusting us that we're going to try to do the right thing. And then what we pride ourselves at our test bed here in Concord and in Contra Costa County is we look for deployment opportunities. So that technology, if you think about it, self-driving vehicles, is the only technology I know of that I've seen in my 36 years in transportation that can help us get transportation services to the underserved. So how do we provide, my mom's 84, one of these days I'm going to have to take her keys away from her because she's not as good a driver as she was when she was much younger. But I'm afraid of my mom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my little sister take the keys away. But the point is, the elderly, they want to go see their grandkids, but their eyes, let's say, have not working as good as they used to, or their reflexes, and the DMV doesn't issue them a license. How do we provide mobility to them? That's our moms and our dads. Or the disabled, physically disabled. You can't walk as far as fast. How do you get there? And then the people that choose not to own a car can't afford a car. That technology is there, and I think it can help them. And so we look for places to deploy, and San Ramon and Bishop Ranch have been great partners. San Ramon has been paying for years express buses from the two BART stations, Walnut Creek and Dublin. In the morning, they bring the workers in. They actually drive back to pick up more workers in the morning empty. because you can't park in Bishop Ranch.
Sure.
But you have all those people around Bishop Ranch that would love to get in those express buses, because now they have to drive the 12 or 13 miles to the BART stations. They clog up the roads, and they have to take one space. So imagine if they get on a bus and there's 40 per bus going back to the BART stations. That's 40 less parking spaces for other people to use. They get a ride in, they get a ride back home, and they take a shuttle, the self-driving shuttle, back into their community to be dropped off. I think we get more transit ridership. We'd free up a lot of space on our local roads as well as the interstate system. And that's really what we're in business to do, is find new ways of moving people, goods, and services here in Contra Costa County.
How long has that testing been going on? Has it been successful? And what was it like riding in one of those things?
Well, the good news has been very successful. We started in 2014. We got our license. We say that's our inaugural day, but we were working on the test bed earlier than that. But 2014 approximately is when we started. And riding in the vehicles is very boring. They go, in this case of the self-driving shuttle, the shared autonomous vehicles, it's about 13 miles an hour, which you could walk maybe a little bit, maybe it's a slight jog, but you can keep up with the vehicle. It's really uneventful. It's kind of slow, but once again, we're testing this vehicle not to be a e-ticket ride at Disneyland. We're testing it to provide a service. And so I think that the vehicle has got a lot of potential, and we got a license. We got the only license in California to operate an autonomous vehicle, self-driving vehicle on public streets. We're proud of that, but we're very careful because safety is our top priority. And so we're working with the manufacturer now to make sure that vehicle can make a left-hand turn in traffic, across traffic, because you as a human judge the oncoming traffic, and you can tell the gap. We want to make sure that vehicle understands what that gap is and how fast that gap is closing before it makes that left-hand turn, because it drives slow. And so we want to make sure all the systems are working properly, so it's very, very safe. And then we're going to start testing with real people aboard.
So do you have a job where someone could drive next to this thing and just mess with it any way it can? Do you actually have a job for that? Because that'd be kind of fun.
No, we don't have a job for that, but we've had people walk out in front of the vehicle just to test to make sure that it does stop.
Was there any oops?
The only issue with you walking out in front, no, there's been no oops on that vehicle on our testing program, other than I asked somebody to walk in front of the vehicle and it stopped very abruptly. It doesn't stop like a human. It stops very, very quickly. And Lindsay Willis, our Director of External Affairs, said don't ever do that again, because everybody was plastered up against the front of the windshield.
Like a cartoon.
Yeah, because of how fast it stopped. And that wasn't a real good demonstration of the stopping power of that vehicle. Is probably better done with just an operator that's prepared for that situation. But it does stop, and we're trying to make sure it can maneuver within lower speed traffic. It wouldn't never get out on State Route 4 with that speed differential, and that's what you asked me a question about earlier about the speed and CHP. It's really when somebody's going 55 miles an hour and the rest of the traffic is going 25, you have a real speed differential and a real problem. And it's a recipe for an accident, because sure. it's so high on Route 4. You have people going very, very fast and other people driving the speed limit, and we need to bring that speed differential back to make it match better. Speaking of San Ramon and GoMentum Station, our test bed, we're always looking for new ways of providing mobility to the traveling public. And so what we have is we have a Redefining Mobility Summit that we're hosting on March 8th at the Roundhouse in San Ramon. This is our 5th annual, and we get some great speakers from all over the world to talk about how they're dealing with congestion, how they're providing safer, more efficient mobility. But this year we have an added twist. We're going to have like a Shark Tank event. Bring us your best ideas. It's a competition, and we're offering $10,000 to the winner. And it's going to be a great opportunity to hear some ideas, not just coming from the old transportation guy like me, but the younger people or people with real ideas. It's a great opportunity to present your ideas, and the final date is February the 15th to make your applications.
Yeah, I've always thought that, sometimes ignorance is a great thing when it comes to ideas, because they don't know the problems, and they've got that open, out-of-the-box philosophy, so that's cool. So when did they have it? What's the deadline on that?
So the deadline is February the 15th, and the website is GoMentumStation.net. GoMentumStation.net. So take a look at that. If you have a great idea and it's selected, you can win $10,000, and hopefully we can implement that great idea.
Sure. And then, is there any other like testing locations you guys are looking at?
So we always look for, in Contra Costa County, we look for other opportunities, and so we'll make an announcement here very shortly. And it's not necessarily self-driving cars, but it's technology to help support self-driving cars.
Got it.
And so we have a partnership that we'll announce with Concord, the city of Brentwood, and the city of San Ramon. That's Lindsay Willis is working on that press release, and we're excited about that, where you can take data to provide information for cars. The city of Walnut Creek has a signal light program where it actually sends out what they call signal phasing and timing information. So you as a human driver, as you're driving down the streets of Walnut Creek, you see a green light. You don't know how long that light's going to be green. So you're driving 35 miles an hour and it only has 3 seconds of green. A car equipped with the technology will read that signal phase and timing. It will start slowing down even though you're not.
Holy smokes.
And so when you tap that brake, ultimately that brake is applied, the car behind it, because they're communicating to each other, it will start slowing down. Because that's the issue with the signal light, is when the front car stops and you don't, you have a problem. So when the front car is a cautious driver, as it sees yellow, you have two choices: continue on or stop. When you choose to stop, you hope that the car behind you stops, and subsequently the remainder of the cars.
Wow.
Well, in the future, the signal light will tell you how much green is left or how much red is remaining, so you can be more prepared to take off orderly and leave the stop sign when you should, or stoplight when you should.
Now, I would argue in East County, people see yellow and go faster. Will this help that?
Yes. Yes. So right now, if you own an Audi, a brand new Audi car, and you're driving your vehicle in Walnut Creek, your car knows on all the signal lights in Walnut Creek what phase, how long that phase is going to be in place, and the car adjusts accordingly.
So what does something like that cost to install? Or
for Walnut Creek, for the infrastructure owner?
No, just for
the
if I
vehicles.
Want to put it in my car, like what would something like that be?
It's actually right now it's available on an app called Enlighten. And so you can actually download on if you have a smartphone, a smart device, you can download Enlighten, and all 100 signals are equipped with that technology, and you can see it as you approach the signal lights. Now, I don't condone looking at a cell phone. I think you should keep your eyes on the road, but if you have the ability to mount your cell phone in a certain location, you can actually have that technology at your fingertips today.
So what
in Walnut Creek.
So going on the technology theme, what pieces of technology have you brought or worked with your team to bring to Contra Costa that were never here before you were hired? Because I know you're a technology guy, and I think some of the stuff you've brought's been really cool.
When I was I worked for CALTRANS, as I mentioned before. When I worked in our District 4, which is the 9 Bay Area counties, it's back in 2001, 2002, I had gone on a trip somewhere in another country, I think it was China, and they had predictive travel times. So it would say Airport X, 12 minutes away. It would have another, and those major points didn't make any sense to me, but they did to commuters. So when I got to District 4, I said, I would like predictive travel times on the changeable message signs before I leave the county, before I leave District 4 and go back to headquarters. And so the team worked on that, and they didn't implement that before I left. They implemented it after I left. But if you look around today on your changeable message signs, it'll say Oakland Airport along Highway 24. It'll say, let's say, 18 minutes.
Sure.
So you, as a savvy person that drives to the airport every day or in that vicinity, if it says 28 or 38 minutes, you know something is wrong. So you're going, what route should I take? What's the issue up there? So it makes you more alert about the situation ahead. Likewise, you got SFO. So these are major milestones or points that people know about, hopefully within their commute, that they can judge, is there a problem? Do I need to bypass and get off on a street, or turn around and go another way? And one of our employees, Hisham Noemi, lives in Alameda County. He lives in Emeryville area. And when he's driving down 24 heading eastbound, he said if it said Orinda X amount of minutes, if it was too big, he would literally get off of 24 because he knows there's a bottleneck ahead, and then weave his way through the local streets back onto 24 right at the tunnel. but in U.S. way. But normally you would stay on the freeway.
Yeah.
Because it's very unpredictable when you get off into sometimes on local streets based on what the demand is.
And that's why sometimes I just take Wilbur into Antioch, because there's no stoplights and there's really not a lot of traffic or police. That's just a helpful tip for everyone. So you've traveled the world, and you just gave an example of some of the technology you've seen, but from a system standpoint and roads and how they do transportation, what are some of the coolest things you've seen around the world that you kind of want to bring here in the future?
Well, I saw predictive travel times somewhere else, and I thought, wow, that's pretty good. That would be a real helpful tool for our commuters. The integrated corridor mobility, or smart corridor, that you see on Interstate 80 heading toward the bridge, goes from Contra Costa through Alameda and ultimately into San Francisco. I saw that in another country that I thought was pretty cool, when you manage your roadway in such a way that you can help travelers make the right decisions along the way to save them time and keep them on time, because that's what people really are like. I've seen another technique that we're trying to bring to Contra Costa County that has kind of a 50-50 approval rating, if you will, is a bus on shoulders during peak hours. And so other states and other countries actually allow, on the outside shoulder, the ability for a bus to, instead of having to... So the idea behind bus on shoulders is this. Currently, if you're on Interstate 680 and you're leaving in a bus from the Walnut Creek bus station and you go down Ignacio Valley onto
Sure.
Interstate 680, in order to get in the HOV lane, you have to weave across to the left from the number 4 lane to the number 1 lane, which is the fast lane, into the HOV lane. And then you stay on that for about 10 miles, 12 miles, and then you go across 4 lanes of interstate, weaving back in a giant bus, back and take the off-ramp.
It really messes all the traffic up.
So it has an effect on congestion. Versus if the bus stays in the number 4 lane, the slow lane on the outside, and as traffic gets below 35 miles an hour, the shoulder is converted to an interim transit lane. That bus weaves over, no traffic, into that empty shoulder. Most of the shoulder along Interstate 680 is auxiliary lane, so it's concrete, so it doesn't have to be redesigned for have that extra heavy loading. And then where it is shoulder, we're going to beef up those shoulders, and where they have drainage facilities and they're not designed to take impact loading from buses or trucks, so we'll beef those up as well. And then that bus then will only weave across no traffic into that outside shoulder, maintain a 35 miles an hour or less speed, whatever the driver feels comfortable, not over 35. And then they get off the freeway at their designated bus route, which keeps that bus on schedule.
So how far away are we from a flying bus then?
Flying bus is a little bit different. To have that kind of, you have a flying bus in an airplane, but it just doesn't go short distances because it's going to be very costly, and you need a long runway in order for it to take off.
So you don't want to give me a timeline?
I'm not. They are testing delivery drones, if that's what you're getting to. There's a lot of drone research and companies taking a look at how do we more efficiently deliver packages to your doorstep on time. I have not heard of a flying bus yet.
Okay, not yet. All right, we're not there. So, in closing, I mean, what are you excited for in the county transportation-wise in the next couple of years? I mean, what should commuters and drivers and people be excited about?
Well, I think what we're doing is we're trying to have a well-thought-out plan for the future so that our projects are staged properly, and Interstate 684 is the next kind of focus area for us. We finished Interstate 680. The auxiliary lanes are in. It's pretty much done. All we're looking at is making that corridor a lot smarter, because it's a major commute corridor and it's in the top 10 in the Bay Area for congested corridors, as is 24, as is 242, as is State Route 4. And so what we're trying to do is make that corridor smart. And I think that you, as in the radio business, or you passing on information to the public, that's a corridor that we can talk about in the future about how, the progress that we're making. We have the HOV lane under construction now, southbound only, but it's going to be an express lane, carpool lane. So if you're a carpool, you can access that for 24 miles from the Benicio Martinez Bridge in the future all the way to the county line. It'll be the longest HOV lane segment that I know of that's got a toll attached to it. So if you're a single occupant vehicle and you're late, for example, for a meeting, you can actually pull into that, pay a toll, and then head southbound. Northbound, we're just starting the environmental process on that because there's a BART column in the way, and it's going to be costly depending on the solution. But there are some projects that are of interest, at least to me, that are going to help congestion that can be modeled elsewhere in the country and the state and other counties to use on that major commute corridor. I think pay attention to that. And then I think we're looking at some minor improvements along State Route 4, operational improvements coming down the hill, because we note that it's not operating that efficiently. And so we're trying to fix some of those weaving issues. And then we're also going to fix some hot spots along 680 when we build those HOV lanes and get that corridor ready for the future. And I can't say enough about, I think, our plan for 680 and its ability to use somewhere else.
And have you seen any I Hate Highway 4 license plates lately?
No, you know what? I did see that I Hate Highway 4. And by the way, I heart State Route 4 or Highway 4 is still available for those listeners that want to take advantage of that. I love Highway 4 license plate. But no, I haven't seen that. But there's been a lot less complaints.
Someone might ram that license plate.
There's a lot less complaints. When I first got here almost 9 years ago, we broke ground actually at Loveridge.
And I have a picture of you holding that sign up.
Yeah, I love State Route 4.
Yes. So, well, Randy, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're probably off to some other transportation function country to look at something cool, but thank you so much for all you've done for making my commute better. And I know you're going to do a lot more in the next couple of years. And I don't know if you'll get me on a driverless bus, but good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here.
Again, this is Mike Burkholder, Contra Costa Today. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.